Most people hear the word cancer and immediately think of fear, confusion, and bad news. But there is another side to the story, and it starts in the kitchen. What if some of the foods you eat every day are not miracle cures, not magic bullets, but quiet defenders that help make the body a less welcoming place for cancer cells? That idea is not hype. It is the reason researchers keep studying diet, inflammation, body weight, and plant compounds as part of cancer prevention. Major health organizations agree on one important point. No single food can protect you from cancer by itself, and the strongest evidence comes from an overall eating pattern rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and other plant foods. In other words, the real story is not about one superfood. It is about creating a body environment that is harder for cancer to exploit. And that is where this list gets interesting, because the foods I'm about to share are not just healthy in a vague way. They contain fiber, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and other compounds that scientists have studied for years because they may influence cell growth, inflammation, DNA damage, hormone pathways, and the kind of internal environment cancer cells prefer. Some of the evidence is strongest in population studies, some is strongest in lab research, and some is promising but still incomplete. That matters because science is careful. It does not tell us that a bowl of broccoli can kill cancer. It tells us that certain foods may help lower risk, support the body's defenses, and make unhealthy growth less likely. Keep that distinction in mind as we go, because it is the difference between a serious health conversation and a dangerous myth. The first food is broccoli, and more broadly, cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, and bok choy. These vegetables have earned a lot of scientific attention because they contain glucosinolates, which can break down into compounds such as isothiocyanates and indoles. In lab studies, one of the best-known compounds from broccoli, sulforaphane, has been shown to influence pathways involved in cancer development and progression. Broccoli is also naturally rich in fiber, folate, vitamin C, vitamin K, and other nutrients that support overall health. The National Cancer Institute and the American Institute for Cancer Research both note that cruciferous vegetables are a major focus of cancer research, but the human evidence is mixed, which is exactly what you would expect from real science. That does not make them less valuable, it makes them honest. If you want one food group that consistently shows up in the cancer prevention conversation, cruciferous vegetables are near the top of the list. And one small practical detail matters too. Gently steaming broccoli for a few minutes may help preserve some of its beneficial compounds better than overcooking it into mush. Here is the part many people miss. The power of broccoli is not just about one compound. It is about the whole package. Fiber helps feed beneficial gut bacteria. Plant chemicals may influence how cells respond to stress. The vegetable itself is low in calories but dense in nutrients, which matters because maintaining a healthy body weight is one of the strongest known ways to reduce cancer risk. So when researchers talk about broccoli, they are not just talking about a green vegetable on a plate. They are talking about a food that fits into a broader biological strategy: less inflammatory load, more protective plant compounds, and a pattern of eating that supports long-term health. That is why this food keeps showing up in cancer prevention research, even though no one can honestly claim it is a cure. It is not one dramatic weapon. It is a steady, repeated signal to the body that health is the priority. The second food is garlic, and this one is fascinating because it has been studied from every angle: chemistry, cell biology, animal research, and human diet patterns. Garlic belongs to the allium family, along with onions and leeks, and its sulfur-containing compounds are the reason scientists pay attention to it. In laboratory studies, garlic compounds have been shown to affect gene expression, help with DNA repair, reduce inflammation, and slow the growth of cancer cells. Some research also points to a lower risk of colorectal cancer in people who eat garlic regularly. That does not mean garlic is a shield that blocks every cancer. It means the compounds inside garlic appear to interact with biological processes that matter in cancer development. Garlic is one of those foods that looks simple on the outside, but is chemically very active on the inside. The smell may be strong, but the research is even stronger. What makes garlic especially useful in a real-life diet is that it is easy to use often. You do not need a supplement aisle version of garlic to benefit from it. You can crush it, chop it, let it rest briefly before cooking, and add it to soups, vegetables, sauces, beans, and fish. That matters because the goal is not to chase a single nutrient in isolation. It is to build a pattern of meals that naturally includes protective ingredients over and over again. The science around garlic is strongest when it is seen as part of that pattern, not as a one-time intervention. This is one reason evidence-based cancer prevention experts often talk less about miracle foods and more about dietary habits. Garlic may not be the headline everyone expects, but in the long run, it is the kind of food that quietly works with the rest of the diet instead of trying to do everything alone. The third food is beans and lentils, and this is where the conversation gets even more practical because these are some of the cheapest and most versatile foods on the list. Legumes are packed with fiber, plant protein, vitamins, minerals, and compounds that support metabolic health. AICR notes that studies suggest beans, peas, and lentils may help with cancer prevention, and their potential role in reducing colorectal cancer risk may come from their fiber and from the way they replace foods that increase risk, such as red and processed meats. That is a powerful idea. Sometimes a food helps not only because of what it contains, but because of what it pushes out of the diet. Beans and lentils help people feel full. They support stable blood sugar, and they fit easily into soups, stews, salads, wraps, and rice bowls. That combination makes them one of the most underrated cancer prevention foods in the world. And this is where the biology gets very interesting. Fiber is not just something that helps digestion. It influences the gut environment, and the gut is increasingly recognized as part of the body's overall immune and metabolic landscape. A fiber-rich diet can also make it easier to maintain a healthy weight, which matters because excess body fat is linked to higher cancer risk. So when you eat beans regularly, you are not simply eating healthy. You are changing the nutritional landscape in a way that supports lower risk across multiple pathways. That is why researchers keep coming back to plant-based diets as a whole. The benefit is cumulative. One bean dish will not rewrite your health overnight, but repeated choices can shift the long-term odds in your favor. That is the kind of science that actually changes lives because it is realistic, affordable, and repeatable. The fourth food is berries, especially blueberries and raspberries. These small fruits are loaded with fiber, vitamins, minerals, and protective plant compounds. AICR describes blueberries as rich in protective plant compounds that may support brain, eye, and heart health along with reducing cancer risk, and raspberries as rich in fiber and elagitonin compounds with laboratory evidence suggesting antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects against cancer. That is a big deal because cancer does not develop in a vacuum. It develops in a body shaped by inflammation, oxidative stress, hormones, immunity, and metabolism. Berries do not erase those forces, but they may help push them in a healthier direction. They are also naturally sweet, which makes them one of the easiest foods to add when someone wants to eat better without feeling deprived. Berries are also a reminder that cancer prevention is often about pattern, not perfection. A handful of blueberries in yogurt, oats, or smoothie will not magically stop disease, but if berries replace dessert that is loaded with sugar and ultra-processed ingredients, the effect is bigger than the berry itself. Now the food is working inside a broader strategy: more fiber, more plant compounds, less metabolic stress, and better overall dietary quality. That is why the most credible cancer organizations talk about dietary patterns rather than isolated miracles. The truth is more powerful than the myth. You do not need to find the one magic berry. You need to build a life in which foods like berries show up often enough to matter. And when they do, they support health in ways that go far beyond the label fruit. The fifth food is tomatoes, especially cooked tomatoes and tomato-based products. Tomatoes are famous for lycopene, the red carotenoid that gives them their color. Lycopene is one of the best-known dietary antioxidants, and the National Cancer Institute notes that it may help prevent some types of cancer, while AICR explains that much of the research has focused on prostate cancer. Here is the honest scientific picture. Some studies suggest benefit, some do not, and the overall evidence is not clean enough to make dramatic claims. But tomatoes are still important because they are nutrient-rich, widely eaten, and an easy source of lycopene. Cooking tomatoes, especially with a little oil, can increase lycopene absorption, which is a great example of food science meeting practical cooking. In real life, that means tomato sauce, tomato soup, and simmered tomato dishes can be more than comfort food. They can be part of an evidence-based pattern of eating. Tomatoes also show why science has to be careful with headlines. Some readers hear tomatoes and cancer and immediately assume the answer is settled. It is not. The better reading is that tomatoes are one useful part of a plant-rich diet, and lycopene is a compound of interest because it may play a role in cancer protection. That is very different from saying tomatoes are a treatment. In fact, the NCI says lycopene has not been approved as a treatment for cancer, and the AICR has also reported that current evidence does not support a clear link between tomatoes and lower prostate cancer risk. That kind of nuance is exactly what makes science trustworthy. It does not force the story to fit the headline. It follows the data wherever they lead, even when the answer is promising but not definitive. The sixth food is tea, especially green tea. Tea contains polyphenols, and green tea in particular is known for EGCG, a compound that has attracted enormous scientific interest. AICR says tea contains compounds that show potential to protect against cancer through antioxidant defenses and by influencing cell growth, while also making it clear that human evidence is limited. That sentence captures the heart of the story. Lab science often looks exciting because the mechanisms are visible under controlled conditions, but real human biology is more complicated. Still, tea remains a smart choice because it is a simple, low-calorie beverage that can replace sugar-sweetened drinks and fit easily into a healthier lifestyle. If someone is reaching for a soda all day, switching part of that habit to unsweetened tea may be a much bigger win than they realize. Sometimes the value of a food is not just what it adds, it is what it replaces. That said, tea is not a magic trick. The science does not support the idea that drinking green tea alone will stop cancer cells from growing inside the body. It does support the idea that plant compounds can influence pathways related to oxidative stress and cell growth, and that tea may be a helpful part of a lower-risk dietary pattern. This is why the strongest guidance from health organizations is always broader than a single ingredient. Avoid tobacco, maintain a healthy weight, eat fruit and vegetables, limit alcohol, choose a diet rich in plant foods. Those are the habits with the deepest support. Tea is one of the easiest companions to that pattern, not the star that replaces it. The seventh food is mushrooms, and this is the one many people never expect to see on a cancer-focused list. Mushrooms contain interesting compounds such as ergosterol and selenium, and AICR has discussed research suggesting that white button and other mushrooms may suppress aromatase, a substance involved in estrogen production, which is relevant to postmenopausal breast cancer risk. That is not the same as saying mushrooms prevent breast cancer on their own. It means they contain bioactive compounds that researchers think might matter, especially in the context of hormone-related cancers. Mushrooms also bring a savory depth to meals, which can help people reduce reliance on heavy sauces, extra salt, or processed meats. So even when the cancer research is preliminary, the culinary value is obvious. Foods do not have to be dramatic to be useful. Sometimes a quiet ingredient that makes plant-based meals more satisfying is exactly what helps people stick with a healthier pattern. Now, step back and look at all 7 foods together. Broccoli, garlic, beans and lentils, berries, tomatoes, tea, mushrooms. What do they have in common? They are not processed, they are rich in fiber or plant compounds or both. They help support healthy weight, healthy digestion, and healthier inflammation levels. And just as important, they fit into a way of eating that health organizations consistently link with lower cancer risk. This is the real takeaway. The goal is not to obsess over one food and imagine it is a shield. The goal is to stack the odds in your favor by building meals that are dense in protective plant foods and low in the patterns that raise risk. That is why experts keep repeating the same message in different words. The total diet matters more than any single food, and the healthiest pattern is one that keeps appearing on your plate over time. There is also one very important reality check that deserves to be said clearly. If someone already has cancer, nutrition becomes more individualized. People in treatment may need different foods, more calories, more protein, or specific adjustments depending on side effects, medications, and the type of cancer they have. The National Cancer Institute points out that good nutrition during cancer treatment can differ from what people think of as a healthy diet in general. That means a food that is helpful for prevention may not be the right choice for every patient at every stage of treatment. So the smartest approach is never one size fits all. Food can support health, quality of life, and treatment tolerance, but it should be used alongside medical care, not instead of it. That difference matters, and it can save people from dangerous misinformation. If you want the simplest possible lesson from all of this, it is this. Cancer does not need to be starved by a single food, because the body is not a battlefield where one magic weapon wins. Instead, cancer risk is influenced by a long chain of choices, exposures, and biology. A healthy diet, a healthy weight, regular physical activity, less alcohol, and no tobacco all work together to reduce risk. The foods we covered are valuable because they fit into that bigger picture. They support the kind of internal environment that is less favorable to disease. They help the body spend more time in repair mode and less time under stress. And when people hear healthy eating, they often imagine restriction. But the better frame is this. Every time you choose broccoli instead of chips, beans instead of processed meat, berries instead of a sugary dessert, or tea instead of a sweet drink, you are not just eating. You are sending the body a signal. And over time, those signals add up. So here is the final message. The science does not say that any food can cure cancer, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling hope without evidence. But the science does say that a plant-rich diet can help lower cancer risk, support health, and make the body a less inviting place for disease to grow. That is powerful, practical, and real. You do not need to wait for a perfect diet. You do not need exotic supplements or expensive powders. Start with ordinary foods that have been studied for a reason. Add broccoli to dinner. Use garlic in your cooking. Make beans a regular habit. Eat berries often. Enjoy tomatoes, especially cooked ones. Drink unsweetened tea. Include mushrooms when you can. Small choices, repeated often, are how science becomes action. And action, repeated over time, is how health changes. That is the truth worth remembering.